In just the last 10 to 14 days, more and more governments, many governments, whether that is Saudi Arabia or Turkey or many European governments or even the United States recently with new policy changes, are talking about either taxing Bitcoin and cryptocurrency more or banning cryptocurrency outright and accelerating their plan for central bank digital currencies or government crypto. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with my YouTube channel and my stagflate tax lie thesis, this is going to come as a surprise. For those of you who are not new to any of this, I have warned about this for years, that Bitcoin for now and cryptocurrencies for now would be allowed to go up. But unfortunately, the history of governments with rules changes, especially for private sector competition against governments' monopoly on currency creation, that is a big no-no throughout history and financial history. Anything in the private sector that has tried to compete with government's ability to create near unlimited, especially for an empire like the United States and other past empires throughout history, a monopoly on money, or rather now a monopoly on currency, anything in the private sector that tries to compete with that. And there's been a lot of examples prior to Bitcoin where people were attempting some type of a crypto. It wasn't full blockchain, or it was some type of gold backing. Anyone that put a vault there, if you've read Bitcoin books in the past, they've talked about this and why Bitcoin was attempted to be created in the first place. Governments, they don't want competition, especially on their currency creation monopoly with this digital debt-based fiat currency and what's coming in the next couple years with an acceleration of government cryptocurrencies, which will track and tax every transaction, potentially implement social credit scores, a Chinese version of social credit scores in the Western world, here in the US and Europe, Canada, Australia. Stagflate tax lie has to do with governments taxing things that they don't like or stealing more and more of your wealth and redistributing it. Governments can also retroactively, ex post facto, change the tax laws. And this is what we're starting to see now, where speculators already made enormous profits potentially over the last 8 months on their cryptocurrency bets, and now governments are calling for higher and higher taxes. Look at the Joe Biden administration talking potentially about almost doubling, roughly doubling the capital gains tax for stock trades, cryptocurrency trades, etc. And then other governments ex post facto talking about banning cryptocurrencies. Again, this has to do with protecting the government monopoly on currency creation. So I am tired of seeing all these near perfect or perfect examples of stagflate tax lie coming to fruition, but people have to prepare for all these rules changes. And people want an easy solution, and there are no easy solutions now. We're in an environment where governments may change the rules on a monthly, weekly, maybe even a daily basis going forward. Too much currency created? No problem. Stop publicly listing the money supply growth numbers, or change the definition of what money supply even is. Change the CPI, change the GDP, change the unemployment numbers. They're not counting small businesses that are near bankrupt or bankrupt. They're not being counted in the unemployment numbers here in the US. So there's tons and tons of examples of stagflate tax lie. If you have a lot of your net worth in crypto and you live in the Western world, I hope that you have 2 or 3 passports and are prepared, if you don't want to sell your crypto or be called a criminal for not doing anything illegal at the time, governments changing the laws ex post facto. I hope you have 2 or 3 passports and are prepared to move your assets and yourself and your family out of your country, because that's how bad things are getting. And that's why you have people like Thomas Piketty from 2013 and Janet Yellen recently talking about a global wealth tax. They're trying to prevent people from fleeing these absolutely horrible monetary and tax policies from all these governments. They're all bad. They're all doing very similar things. Some are worse than others. So for patrons, I have a number of articles that have come out in the last week or so about global macro, and the global macro conditions now are favoring gold and silver and gold stocks again, if you want to take a look behind the paywall for only $5, and also an extensive oil article that took me about 90 minutes, wrapping up the oil market with a lot of charts and a lot of articles that I've collected over the last month or two. talking about changes in the oil market. If you want to take a look behind the paywall, it's only $5 a month if you want to chip in for content like this and get bonuses behind the paywall for a lot of extra in-depth analysis. And there's a lot more planned for patrons behind the paywall too. I'm working on booking an oil expert for 30 or 40 minutes. That'll only be for patrons behind the paywall. If I do release that interview for free, it'll be a month or two after the interview is released for patrons. Bottom line here is that if you have been paying attention to my work, my Stagflate tax life thesis, for at least 6 months or a year now, this should come as no surprise. I've been warning for years that as things got worse and worse, the pandemic is just an excuse for governments to spend trillions more on whatever they want to spend it on, increase taxes, so stagflate with currency creation, inflate asset prices, tax you even more on a bunch of different things, and the tax laws are retroactive, and then lie about it by either changing the rules, moving the goalposts, changing the formulas, so it fits a certain government economic narrative, because we're being fed on a daily basis now constant economic propaganda.